Chapter 5 Tempting Lips Part 1. Travelers in Italy must be prepared to encounter strikes, or sciopero as the locals call them. A national strike will stop all transportation, close museums, and leave sightseers unable to see many sights at all. Workers in the ports around the Strait of Messina happened to be on sciopero that day, shutting down all the ferries and turning the bustling port into a ghost town. "Is this sciopero our doing?" Fugo asked. Murolo just grinned at him but would not answer. Passione may well have ordered it. There was usually some sort of underworld influence behind most strikes. The sight of made men standing between striking laborers, hashing out the details of illegal business deals, was an everyday sight in Italy. "Okay, the warehouse where they found bloodstains is this way," Sheila E said, taking the lead. The others followed. The door of the warehouse had a no trespassing sign hung on it. Sheila E gave it a tug, and when it proved locked, she produced her stand. "Voodoo child," she whispered, and the door exploded inwards, a powerful blow ordinary eyes could never have seen. "I had the key," Murolo said, but Sheila E ignored him. She stepped inside, her stand following after. Voodoo child was a short-range power type, and the spike-covered shadow never moved far from her side. When Sheila E reached the darkened stain on the floor, Voodoo Child began punching the floor around it with iron-like fists. Shrieking at the top of its lungs, it pounded the floor like a child throwing a tantrum. The concrete floor began to break, countless cracks running across it. A moment later, those cracks began to change, each of them morphing into a pair of lips. They pursed themselves, then began speaking, all at once. "Asshole already has another girl on side. I've lost gambling. Got to blame him for my screw-up son. I hate him so much. I think the kids start another rumor." There was no connection, no context, no sense that these were a conversation, just, "Oh," Fugo thought. "These are all things people who've worked in this warehouse said. Things they didn't want anyone else to hear. Thoughts and feelings that seeped into the ground, their guilt and self-loathing trapping them here, haunting the place until Sheila E's stand pulled them to the surface." She'd said she was looking for the man who killed her sister. This search was reflected in her stand's power. It allowed her to hunt for clues, uncover sins, and get revenge, as focused and clear a personality as there was. So unlike my own. Fugo broke off that train of thought. It wasn't leading anywhere good. He preferred not to dwell on what Purple Haze's killer virus said about his own state of mind. Sheila E dismissed meaningless voice after meaningless voice until only one remained. "I obey you. Obey you. Obey you." "That's him," Fugo said. "That's Volpe's voice." "So they did fight here," Murolo nodded. "We aren't the first sent after them. The last group got taken out here. The bodies will be sleeping with the fishes by now." "But what does it mean?" Sheila E asked. "Does Volpe feel guilty about following Kokaki's lead? I don't get it. If he wanted to be in charge and was hiding that, Voodoo Child would have said so." She looked at Fugo. "I don't know," he said. "It's not like I knew him well." Murolo waved a hand dismissively. "It's not like we need to profile him. What's important is that this proves my watchtower's prophecy was right. They left this harbor, crossed the strait, and headed to Taormina." He puffed out his chest with pride. Sheila E gave him a look, and then sighed. "I guess you're right. We came here to be sure, and now we are. Let's go." They headed for the yacht waiting in the harbor. The only way to Sicily during a strike was to use a privately owned vessel. When he saw the yacht provided for them, Fugo gulped. It was the same model as the lagoon Bucciolati had owned. He remembered the first time he'd seen the lagoon. "Ha ha ha! Damn, that's so sweet! This is really Bucciolati's!" Narancia was straight up dancing with excitement. He was 17, but his eyes shone like a 6-year-old. "That's what he said," Fugo answered. He was sure Bucciolati had invited them to the yacht for some secret mission, and was too tense to enjoy any of it. But the idea had clearly never entered Narancia's head. He was able to simply enjoy the prospect of a yachting expedition. Fugo shook his head. "What do you think, Abbacchio?" Abbacchio had said nothing for some time, and said nothing in response. He'd been a cop once, and his silence carried weight. Fugo had grown used to it, but he'd seen Abbacchio make children cry with silence alone, then glare at them without a shred of guilt. He was that kind of man. "I wonder if this is it," Fugo said. "I don't know what this Giorno is capable of, but if we're bringing someone new on board, it must be time." "I'm sure they're making Bucciolati capo," Fugo said excitedly. "He's got the results, he's got the support. He should have been promoted by now, but..."
"Don't speculate," Abbacchio hissed. "It's a weakness of yours, Fugo. You think too much. You think on things best left unthought."
Fugo bit his tongue.
"Our role is to do as Bucciolati tells us. Put our faith in him. That's all, am I wrong? Trust him. But not this new guy. Be on your guard with him."
"But Bucciolati brought him in. Trust Bucciolati, but not the man he trusts. Isn't that contradictory?"
"They're different, and you know it."
Narancia came running back to them. "Let's take a picture! Everyone line up in front of the boat." Fugo couldn't help but smile.
"Good idea," Mr. said behind them. "Bucciolati, you too. New guy, you take the picture."
He tossed Giorno a camera and stood in front of the yacht. Bucciolati shook his head, but followed suit. "Okay, everyone, look this way," Giorno said, like he'd done this 100 times before. He lined up the shot with the 5 of them and the lagoon behind them, and snapped the photo, the clear blue sky behind them. But the sky today was grey and cloudy. I wonder what happened to that photo. He had forgotten about it completely. They'd taken the yacht to Marina Grande on Capri. Bucciolati had been made capo, but in return was charged with guarding the boss's daughter, who was being targeted by the assassin team. None of them had a chance to get the film developed. It might be in the camera still. It could be anywhere. By the time Fugo dragged himself from his reverie, land was in sight, and Murolo was guiding them closer to the shore. Sicily. The island had been conquered by Phoenicians, Greeks, Arabs, Normans, and more, but to this day the inhabitants called themselves Sicilians, not Italians. But the culture had assimilated so many influences, it was no longer possible to tell what was uniquely Sicilian. More than one church bore trademarks of both Arabic styles and Norse. As a trade center in the middle of the sea, it had been a part of all history. One of the greatest Greek philosophers, Archimedes, made Sicily his home, choosing it as the place to pass on his knowledge before being struck down at the hands of invaders. The place bred darkness and light in equal measures. The great human spectacle, comedy and tragedy in equal measure, wrote the author Giuseppe Fava before being assassinated by the mafia he campaigned against. When Allied forces landed here during the Second World War, the Axis defeat became a certainty and history would never be the same. It was that sort of place. Fugo stood staring at the cliffs as they drew near. "Earth to Fugo," Sheila E said from right behind him. Fugo jumped. Hi," he said awkwardly. "Please tell me you weren't getting cold feet just because you and Volpe used to hang out." "No, nothing like that. He is the root of all evil. He can't be allowed to live." Yeah, drugs are bad." "You don't get it," Sheila E said. "I know what you're thinking. If they want to do drugs, let them. Their choice. If they want to die, who cares how they do it, right? That's a mistake. It isn't the flesh drugs devour, it's the soul. Human bodies naturally produce narcotics in response to suffering, to help us overcome it. But if we give ourselves to narcotics, it doesn't do anything to the cause of said suffering. Instead, it multiplies it. But the person taking the drugs is less and less aware of it. The suffering spreads to their families, to innocents around them, taking advantage of their weakness. Those who sell drugs are insulting the world and everyone in it, insulting humanity, dignity, the future, insulting life itself. They deserve what's coming to them." Sheila E spoke as if reading a script, like she'd memorized a speech someone else had told her and was repeating it verbatim. Someone whose words she trusted implicitly. Giorno Giovanna. She followed him blindly. If he told her to die, she would not hesitate. She would let Fugo's virus take her life. That's why she'd been sent to meet him. Fugo had seen people trust others this way before, trust them more than they did themselves. He recognized the desperation that lay behind it. He remembered what that boy had said. Bucciolati, what should I do? Should I come? I'm scared. But if you order me to, if you say come with me, then I'll find the courage to go. I'm not scared of anything you tell me to do. Sheila E's eyes were the same as Narancia's had been. Narancia. He hadn't always been that way. His faith in Bucciolati was not earned overnight. Narancia had led his own life before Bucciolati, had suffered his own way, had picked his own battles. Fugo knew this better than anyone. After all, I was the one who introduced Narancia to Bucciolati. Fugo had been summoned to Bucciolati's favorite restaurant to discuss a job. He was running late and in a hurry when he saw the boy. The boy was rummaging through the garbage bins out back, eating vegetable scraps and picking the meat off used soup bones. He looked like any other homeless kid. The economy was a mess and there were people like him on every corner. Normally, Fugo would have passed him without a second glance. So why did he stop and look? Because when the boy saw Fugo staring at him, he didn't look guilty, ashamed, or even angry. There was an air of resignation to him, as if he'd long ago learned that nothing said to him and nothing he could say would change anything. Fugo would later learn that the infection in the boy's eyes had grown so bad he'd been told he would die from it. But what Fugo sensed in that moment was not that kind of resignation, nothing that intense. It was a very casual resignation, too casual for Fugo to pity him or view him with contempt. The boy's name was Narancia Ghirga. Their eyes met, and a second later, for reasons he himself did not understand, Fugo walked over to the boy, took his arm, and dragged him to the restaurant. The boy didn't fight it, just let himself be led. Fugo did not stop to see how he would react. The moment he set foot inside the restaurant, he called out to Bucciolati, "I want to feed him some spaghetti. You don't mind, right?" The restaurant owner looked surprised, but Bucciolati didn't bat an eye. He motioned the two of them over and pushed his own plate over to Narancia without even looking in Fugo's direction. Fugo had known he would do this. Bucciolati had a soft spot for kids, especially ones in trouble. Fugo later wondered if he'd only brought Narancia along to cover his own lateness, but only because he was so unsure of the real reason. When Bucciolati noticed Narancia's illness, he called a taxi and took him directly to the hospital. Fugo was left alone in the restaurant. He found himself with no appetite, pushing the food listlessly around his plate. Narancia's gaze haunted him. He felt as if he'd seen it somewhere before. He felt like he knew that emptiness in the boy's eyes. "I hate to say it, Mr. Fugo," the restaurant owner said. This was Bucciolati's territory, and it was part of Fugo's job to protect the businesses in it. "But you cannot just give handouts to kids like that. If word spread, we could have a mob of them gathering outside." He said it as delicately as possible. "Don't worry," Fugo said curtly. "He doesn't have any friends." Why was he so certain? He wasn't sure, but he knew for a fact he was right. "Even so, I hear you. I won't do it again, and I'll make sure Bucciolati gets the message." The owner sighed. "Bucciolati can be quite a softy. I suppose that's why my madre is such a fan of his, but I'd rather pay a little more protection money in return for his laying down the law on these matters. Nobody's making trouble for you now, are they? Let it be. I'd like a better class of customers, with deeper pockets, with all these poor people coming." The owner's words suddenly made Fugo's blood boil. He slammed his fist down on his plate of hot food, breaking the plate. He'd snapped. When these violent fits of rage came upon him, he couldn't stop himself. He had no idea what he would do. The owner jumped back, frightened. Expressionless, not glancing at him, Fugo pulled out his wallet, bits of plate sticking out of his burned, bleeding hand. He tossed the wallet at the owner. "For the plate and the trouble, keep the change." And with that, he stormed out of the shop. He couldn't be bothered wondering why he'd been so mad. 6 months later, he ran into Narancia on the street. The boy came running over to him. "Hey, it's you, right? He helped me out." Narancia's eye disease had been cured, and he was healthy again. Fugo almost regretted it. He didn't like it when strangers were friendly like this. But Narancia spoke with evident desperation. I was looking for you. I don't know who else could help.
When he saw the boy's eyes, Fugo stopped. They were different. These were not the same eyes he'd seen before.
You're a gangster, right? Word on the street says you're Bucciolati's right-hand man. Everyone looks up to you.
Narancia, was it? What do you want?
I really need a favor. I'm grateful for all you did, of course, and I want to make it up to you. Can I join your gang?
What did Bucciolati say? Fugo knew exactly what he'd said. Narancia stared at his feet, sullen.
Go home, kid. Go to school.
Then do that.
Don't say that. I mean, like...
Narancia spluttered, unable to form any coherent protest. Yet somehow Fugo felt he knew exactly what the boy was trying to say.
You can't trust your parents, and the school teaches you nothing but lies, right?
Narancia looked surprised.
Yeah. How'd you know? Give it up, kid. That's just how the world is. Give me a break, man. You just know how it is. You see him, you feel it, like in your chest, like right here. Everything just feels at peace. You feel strong enough to face anything. The way he got all mad at a dirty kid like me, genuinely angry at me. My parents, those teachers, they only got mad because it was their job to scold me, but he...
There were tears in Narancia's eyes, but they couldn't dull the gleam. That resignation was gone. The hopelessness in his eyes as he'd rooted through the dumpster was gone. Meeting Bucciolati had given him a future, given him a dream of how he wished to live. At last, Fugo understood why he'd helped Narancia that day.
He's just like I used to be, like I was, alone in the police station before Bucciolati saved me.
Certain there was no help coming, he'd given up on everything. When he saw that, Fugo had reached out to help. But he was different now. His eyes were nothing like Fugo's. Nothing like the old Fugo, nothing like the new Fugo. The light in his eyes was something else entirely.
Please, man, I promise I won't tell Bucciolati.
He was practically begging, clutching Fugo's sleeve. If Fugo turned him down, he wouldn't give up. But if he went around asking to join Passione, it could get him killed. Fugo took a deep breath and sighed.
Turn around, Narancia,
he said quietly. Huh? Why?
Just do it.
Confused, Narancia turned his head. He frowned, then yelped.
What the hell is that? Like a ghost, or I can see through it.
Fugo nodded.
If you can see purple haze, you've got the potential.
Huh? What?
You should be able to pass Pulpo's test with no problem. It won't get you killed.
Fugo dismissed purple haze. Narancia stared at him.
Is that a yes then? You'll let me join? I'll make the introductions. After that, it's up to you. When you meet the capo, try not to act like an idiot.
Narancia scowled.
I'm not an idiot. Saying that is a great way to look like you are, kid. Why you gotta talk down to me like that?
Like what?
Calling me kid. You know I'm older than you, right?
So?
I've been a maid man for over a year.
Yeah,
but...
Narancia didn't look happy about it. Fugo knew why. He didn't want to be beholden to anyone but Bucciolati. He didn't care about Passione's hierarchy.
Okay, I promise not to call you kid.
Are you making fun of me?
You can call me Fugo. We're even.
Sure I can't talk you into calling me sir? Hell no, I'm not calling an idiot sir. Besides, Bucciolati doesn't even let us call him that. Oh, wait, did you just call me an idiot?
Bucciolati hates idiots. Oh no.
Back then, Fugo and Narancia were on even ground. Bucciolati had saved them both. They were both working to pay him back. There was little difference between them. But now, Narancia was dead, and Fugo had to kill the narcotics team to prove he wasn't a traitor. Which of them was superior? Narancia had been convinced age was most important. What would he think of it? It didn't matter. Narancia was no more. Fugo would have to find the answer for himself.
What did those words mean, Narancia? What you said on San Giorgio Maggiore? The last thing I ever heard you say.
Lost in thought, Fugo scarcely noticed the shores of Sicily approaching.
It's starting to rain,
Sheila E said, gazing up at the sky, raindrops splattering on her cheeks.
Hello everybody, welcome to the end of this chapter. I hope you guys had fun listening to this one, as it was very fun to do, and I've been really inspired after listening to some of the comments that people have left saying how much they've enjoyed the audiobook, and they've been dropping me ideas and of course dropping likes and subscribes and stuff like that. But more importantly, you know, what I read in the comments is a lot of people are getting a lot out of this audiobook, and that really inspires me to go the extra mile with these. So for example, in this video you heard me putting in some new effects like this one. Hope you guys enjoyed that when that effect came up. That took a bit of effort, but that was still very fun to do. So if you've been one of these people that have been leaving comments, I just wanted you guys to know that it means a lot and that I'm really working as hard as I can to make these awesome. Speaking of comments, I was left one which asked for a version of the audiobook without these postscripts, like these little sections where I talk to you. And that's perfectly feasible. In fact, I was thinking of releasing one anyway. This just kind of confirms my feelings on it. So expect that to be out within a couple of weeks. I just don't want to release the 6 episodes that are out just as they are, because firstly I have to check if everything is fine. Then it's like a matter of content, like do I want to release these clean versions of the audiobooks when there's only so little content already out. So I'm gonna wait until there's a couple more videos, and then I'm gonna start editing the ones that are already out, releasing those, and then we'll see how things progress from there. Anyway, that's all I really wanted to say with this chapter. It was very Narancia focused, so I don't have much to say because Narancia is a character that has already been explored in Vento Oreo. And so I'm assuming you guys have read that, and a lot of the character development that happens in Vento Oreo is kind of touched upon very lightly in Purple Haze feedback, so there's no point in kind of repeating what has already happened in Vento Oreo. I think the only completely new thing that was in this chapter was Sheila E's stand, Voodoo Doll. No, Voodoo Child, that's what it's called, Voodoo Child. But we honestly get a much better understanding of her stand in the next chapter. So I'm gonna hold off until then, as we have reached the end of this chapter. As always, thank you guys very, very much for listening, especially if you've been with me all the way from the start and have been commenting, leaving your thoughts, showing me ways that I can improve since I am still pretty new at this. If you've been one of those people, I owe a huge debt of gratitude to you. One that I can only repay by just putting in as much effort as I can to these audiobooks. There's definitely more audiobooks that are going to come out. I think even after Purple Haze, I'm going to start working on those other JoJo light novels that are out. If you guys are interested in that, then definitely subscribe, and that will really help the channel. Of course, liking the video if you enjoyed it will also really help the video, and sharing it around is obviously gonna increase viewership, and well, that's how a channel gets started. So that's the end of this chapter. I'll see you on the next one as the gang makes its way to Sicily. Very exciting stuff.